Good afternoon, everybody. It is 3 o'clock here. Um, I hope everyone is doing well today. It's been great to see everybody chiming in on where they're joining today's webinar from. I always love seeing the diversity of folks come in and sharing this space with us. We're gonna get started in just a second. Excellent. So we have folks from Central and Eastern North Carolina joining us today. Hopefully we'll have we got Burke County, so we got some and Salisbury. We've got some foothills folks joining us. Um, we're going to go ahead and get started. And just for those of y'all who are joining us, this webinar is going to be recorded. So if you have to leave early or anything, please feel free to leave. You're not going to miss anything. Everything is going to be available. So we're glad that you're joining us live because it's going to be give you an opportunity to ask questions and get some more information about the census. So my name is Amanda Bratcher. I am the horticulture agent with North Carolina Cooperative Extension Lee County Center. I also serve as the state coordinator for the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. It's originally based in Georgia, and I was part of the team that brought it to North Carolina back in 2023. And every year we've still been trying to figure out what is the best practice for getting everybody excited about the census. Since it's only 2 days in August, and this year, given the response that we've had over the last couple of years, I was like, okay, we are doing this in the spring and hopefully get some folks plenty of time to get ready. So this webinar is a general knowledge webinar about the Great Southeast Pollinator Census and how to get involved. So I really appreciate everybody taking the time today to learn more about the Great Southeast Pollinator Census and how you can participate. I'm going to say this a couple times today. We have some goals this year. The last 3 years, we have just been trying this out across North Carolina. And this year, we are being very concerted in our goals. And so we want to complete more than 10,000 counts across North Carolina. And we want to have at least one count in every county in North Carolina. 98 of the 100 counties have counted, and there are two that we're kind of missing, but I want everybody at least one count. So first of all, this is a webinar format. So the only person you can see is me. The only person you can hear is me. So just wanted you to make sure that you weren't going crazy. It is going to be recorded and posted on YouTube, and everybody who is registered will get a copy of this. I see a lot of folks have figured out how to use the chat, which is great. But if you have questions, please submit them through the question and answer button. That is the best way to help me keep track of the questions that are coming in. That way, I can answer them towards the end of the presentation. So as you've noticed, I am from NC Cooperative Extension, and our mission is to extend research-based knowledge to all North Carolinians, helping them transform science into everyday solutions that improve their lives and grow our state. So I'm based in Lee County, but I serve all folks from North Carolina through the mission of Extension. And I have to give a great shout out to the to the Extension Master Gardener volunteers, as they are the extension of horticulture programs across the state. And there are dozens of counties that have taken the Great Southeast Pollinator Census on as a community project. And that is all in part to Extension Master Gardener volunteers coordinating projects in their own counties and offering education opportunities for free and reduced cost in their own local communities. So hopefully by the end of this session, our goals are that you would understand what the Great Southeast Pollinator Census is and how you can integrate the census into what you're doing in your own community or even if just in your own yard. Understand what pollinators are and why they're important, and give you an opportunity to answer any questions that you have about the census. So the census in and of itself is only 15 minutes in terms of the data collection window, but your 15 minutes counts, even if it's just one 15-minute window that you do in August. Since 2022, when the Great Southeast Pollinator Census, when it was the Great Georgia Pollinator Census became the Great Southeast Pollinator Census, there have been more than 66,000 counts across the Southeast, and more than 1.2 million insects has been documented across 5 states so far. And in 2025 alone, more than 1,000 new pollinator habitats were created across the Southeast. And as you can tell from this chart, this is just a very simple graph of the number of counts per year as states have come online in the census, and it's been exponential growth. This year, Mississippi is joining us for the first time, um, and I know that all the census states are really excited. So the type of data that we're generating is the number of insects seen per insect group. So we have 8 different insect groups that we're going to talk about briefly today. But from a color chart standpoint, it's kind of fun. Again, this data really is very young, and we aren't really looking too hard at it. For another couple of years, you don't really get a sense of trends in pollinator visitation in a short amount of time, like 3 to 5 years. We're really looking for that 7 to 10 year mark. So even though we're not really in that relevant data period yet, every year that we participate makes that data more and more robust and more representative of what's going on in our pollinator populations in our states. I will tell you though, if you look really closely at this, when Florida and North Carolina, Florida joined us for the first time in 2024, we had very similar numbers of people that counted, but the types of pollinators that they saw were very different. Florida saw more small bees and honeybees than North Carolina. North Carolina ended up seeing more bumblebees and butterflies and moths compared to Florida. And that is very indicative of the different types of pollinators that are active in these states. And you see that especially in 2025 when you look at Florida compared to Georgia and North Carolina and Alabama. Those percentages are much higher in bees versus butterflies and bumblebees with North Carolina and Georgia. So we're starting to see some cool stuff, but we still have a lot of data to collect. So we've only been participating for 3 years in North Carolina, and I want to show you guys where folks have been counting. So for those of y'all who are joining us, wherever you're joining from, you can see how your county has been represented and maybe how more people can get involved. In 2023, definitely indicated that a lot of our more urban centers were participating. And then as we got to 2024, more and more counties were starting to join. And then in 2025, we more than doubled the number of people from 2024, and 92 of the 100 counties in North Carolina participated. Now, I'm not calling anybody out for a negative reason, but Greene County and Hyde County have never had anybody count in them. So if you have friends or family or need to vacation somewhere during August, please go to Greene and Hyde County and let's get a count in those counties. And we'd have a count in every county. But remember, we want a count in every county this year, and I think we can do it. I'm really positive about this year. So the census, the goals of the census are actually quite simple. The first goal is to create sustainable pollinator habitat. So we don't want just people planting pretty flowers for the census. We want people to be creating habitats for the long term. So as your gardens and your spaces become more established and persist through time, more and more pollinators can be supported by them. We also want to increase the entomological literacy of our citizens. And entomology is the study of insects, so that we just want folks to be more aware that insects are out there in our ecosystems, that they're very important, and that there's so many different kinds, and they're in more places than a lot of people think. Finally, we want to generate useful data about our pollinator populations. So by participating in the census, contributing data, we're able to understand what types of pollinators are visiting specific plant species, but we're also able to see from a geographic standpoint what types of pollinators are more prevalent in different areas. So we're very excited to see how those data are coming in. So the Great Southeast Pollinator Census as a program is really the brainchild of Becky Griffin, who is pictured here in the middle. And she is the state coordinator for school and community gardens for the University of Georgia Extension. And she was really surprised by the lack of awareness about pollinators and their importance to gardens by folks who were cultivating community and school garden spaces. She was getting phone calls where people were planting tomatoes and squash, but there were no fruit because there were no flowers. And so she started this program as a pilot in 2017. And by 2019, it was so successful that she launched it statewide. And South Carolina joined for the first time to make it the Great Southeast Pollinator Census in 2022, thanks to Amy Dabbs, who is here on the left. She is the state coordinator for community and school gardens for South Carolina, and they were friends. And Becky was like, "You got to try this, Amy," and it has taken off since then. And it has actually now gone international, which we went to London last year to talk to some colleagues, which I'll mention in a second. So the census is really quite simple. It's 15 minutes of your time or more if you've got the time. But there's a lot of benefits to it. So by participating, you are showing that you're supporting pollinators in your community, and showing that they are important to your ecosystem. And I found people anecdotally have said that they find peace and calm, and they realize how many more insects there are in their communities than they solved before. We're also gathering valuable data. There's very few scientists out there. They're only people. So they can't be everywhere at once, but if we have everyone taking data everywhere, we can count those. We can be in more places than one. We're also by kind of doing the Great Southeast Pollinator Census and gathering that data, there is some prep that you have to do. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But even just whether you have a workshop or a class prior to the census, or you just kind of orient people as they come up to participate if you're hosting an event, people get education. They become more aware of these insect groups. And sometimes that can just be the start of them engaging more deeply with their garden, with their local ecosystem. And finally, it is actually fun. In a way, like I said, you're sitting there for 15 minutes. You're not really required to go anywhere. You're trying to ignore your phone. You're just watching insects doing their thing on hopefully some beautiful flowers. And it's really quite therapeutic. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And because it's a fairly flexible program, there's lots of different ways that you can utilize the Great Southeast Pollinator Census in your life and in your community. So for teachers, it's a great community science project that different age groups can do and be plug and played with different curriculum. For nursery owners, it's a great way to drive foot traffic and highlight pollinator-friendly plants that you have. I've seen nurseries offer discounts for people who choose to participate in the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. Some of them have set up counting stations that people can count while they're shopping for plants. It's a really cool thing to see. For community leaders, it can be a great outreach project that you can do to promote your local ecological mission. And for home gardeners, it's just a way to engage with your garden in a different way, especially if you're trying to understand more about pollinators or if you have a pollinator centric mission with your garden space. So I keep mentioning the census. How do you do the census? So the census is only 2 days a year. This year it is August 21st, which is a Friday, and 22nd, which is a Saturday. And on that day or prior to the day, you can download the official data sheet, which looks like this here on the right-hand side. You find a plant that has insects landing on it. Any plant. It doesn't have to be full of insects, just some plant in flower that has insects landing on it. You set a timer for 15 minutes, whether that's on your phone or, classic kitchen timer, whatever works. And you tally mark every single time you see a different insect group type land on that plant. So for Charlotte Glenn, she watched a Vernonia lettermanni, the threadleaf ironweed. And so there was a 12 bumblebee landings. Now this could have maybe looked like one or two bumblebees, but even if they come up and fly back down, and you're like, yes, I know that's the same bumblebee, don't worry about it. It's about how many times the different insects land on it. That's because statistically, some insects you can't tell if they fly away and come back. You may not be able to tell that they're the same insect. So it's to kind of round out that possibility when we're taking these data. So after that 15-minute observation period, you upload your count to the Great Southeast Pollinator Census website. You can do it on your phone or on your computer. It takes about 5 minutes to do, and you can even scan the QR code at the top of the sheet. It's not very hard, and then you're done. I would say it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to kind of complete the whole process. So really not that long. And you can do it as many times as you want. You do not have to just do it once and be done. It's really about the counting for that 15-minute period. So I've seen people go out in their yard and they count like early in the morning on a plant. They count on the same plant at noon and they count at the same plant at 5 o'clock. And it really is interesting to see how different pollinators come to plants at different times of day. So you can have as much fun with it as you would like. So like I said, there are 8 different insect groups that we are looking at with the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. So we have carpenter bees, which I know not everybody loves, but these are large bees native to the southeastern United States. And they look like honeybees, but we know carpenter bees by their shiny hiney and their large size. The next group we have are bumblebees, and these are very fuzzy. They tend to be smaller than carpenter bees. And then we have honeybees, which are only Apis mellifera, our standard honeybee. Then small bees, and this is any bee that looks smaller than a honeybee. Wasps, which have they have their, we call them a skinny waistline. Um, or their wasp waist. Flies. Flies are very important pollinators. They typically have large eyes and small antennae. Moths and butterflies. And I love how on the data sheet, the official data sheet says don't overthink it, and it's true. And then finally, other insects is just any other insect that you see that isn't in this other group. You will notice that is specifically noting insects. We are not counting hummingbirds. And I know folks in the past have been very bummed that we're not counting them. But this is the Great Southeast Pollinator Census, and we're focusing on the insects. Now, I've run through this very quickly, and you may be like, I have never heard of these small bees before, Amanda. And that's just fine. You guys, now that you've registered for this and maybe that you're watching this webinar, I will tell you as you visit the Great Southeast Pollinator Census website in North Carolina, we will be hosting a How to Know the Insects webinar in July. So stay tuned for that. And that will be a webinar where we get NC State experts to walk through the finer points of these insect groups and how to identify them. And we even have a try to stump the entomologist quiz during that time. So mark your calendars for July for that webinar. So who can do the census? Anyone. It doesn't have no age group, no anybody particular. Anybody who is visiting North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and South Carolina can do the census. It's not about where you're from, it's about where you are. So we've had farmers, we've had businesses, gardeners, government folks, we've had corporate people do it. It's really quite lovely how flexible it is. Anybody. And where do you do the census? So again, it's anywhere, anytime you are in any of the states that are participating in the census, you can do the census. Really, the important thing is that you find a plant that has insects landing on it. So you can be walking down a nature trail in your in your hometown. You can go out to your own, patio container garden. You can count on the display pots in a downtown area or a brewery. It really doesn't have to be anywhere in particular. Because I'm with Extension, though, I am going to give a quick shout out to my colleagues across North Carolina. So we have a network of Extension demonstration gardens. These are very similar to botanical gardens, which in North Carolina we have more than 30 of those. But if you want to find out where to connect with an Extension demonstration garden, here is a QR code and link to a Google Maps list. So you can visit any of these. Most of these gardens are open year round, sun up to sundown. A lot of them offer programs leading up to the census. So if you've never heard of them before, please go visit them. I'll tell you right now, in Lee County, which is southwest of Raleigh, just in the center of the state, we'll be doing programming leading up to the census. So hope to see you at one of the Extension demonstration gardens. And as you can see, they're from the mountains to the sea. You have no excuse. So what makes a flower pollinator friendly? So typically pollinators, insect pollinators especially, are either attracted to a flower by their colorful petals or some sort of nectar or a scent. Not all flowers are all sorts of different shapes, sizes, colors, functionalities, but and it really each insect has a different preference for size, shape, and color. But for pollinators, typically they're going to pollen or to flowers for either a nectar drink, which is essentially an energy drink for insects, or they are going to collect pollen, especially in the case of bees. They are going to be collecting that pollen for their young. And in some cases, some bees even go to flowers to collect wax. So there's a lot of resources that are offered by flowers. The really important thing, though, is that these flowers are not treated with insecticides. A lot of pesticides are going to tell you not to spray when flowers are present on plants. So just make sure that you're not treating your yard or your flowers with insecticides. So a lot of people do tend to plant Joe Pyeweed and goldenrod and agastache. These are some of the top 10 plants that are counted every year in North Carolina because they are flowering quite beautifully in August. And they have lots of flowers for lots of different pollinators to land on it. So it can get overwhelming when you look at them, especially we have a mountain mint in our demonstration garden. And I mean, hundreds of different types of insects are on that thing, especially during the census. So if you have a very active plant, you want to count in the census on that plant, choose a small section to watch. Becky always says, make a circle with your arms and just count in that one area. And that means that 2 or more people could observe on the same plant at the same time, just not in the same area. I've also seen people team up, and so somebody is a caller and somebody's a recorder, and that way you don't get too overwhelmed kind of looking back and forth between your paper and the plant. It is important to know that not all flowers are great for pollinators. Unfortunately, as gardeners, we do like some odd things. So this is a classic Echinacea hybrid. There are several different ones that I think this one's Pow Bow Pink. So all of the nectaries and stamens have been turned into petals. And so for pollinators, there really isn't any resource for them to get. They're beautiful in your garden, but they're not really functional for pollinators. So make sure when you're choosing plants that you want to support pollinators with, that they actually possess pollen and nectar for your pollinators. I mentioned that the state coordinator team went to the UK last year, and that's because the UK POMS or Pollinator Monitoring Scheme, which is based out of their equivalent of the EPA, they have a very similar census type program that they do across the United Kingdom, which includes England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. And they have, instead of us, which we say count on any plant that you want to, they have a list of 20 plants that they ask for people to count insects on. They have a lot less plants that are native and found in their gardens and in their wild areas. They're about 1,100 plants. In the southeast, we have more than 6,000. Actually, it's probably closer to like 10,000. So they have to be more specific about the plants that they're looking at. But we found that oregano, or plants in the genus Oreganum, they're counting, and so are we. So we are encouraging folks, if you have oregano in your garden, to spare a census count for oregano so we can compare data between the UK and the Southeast. So we're very excited about the first time we did it was last year, so we're looking at that data set to continue to grow in the future. If you're like, Amanda, this is cool, and I have, but I don't know where to start. Like, what do I plant? I want to plant something for the census. And so here are 20 different pollinator plants that Becky recommends for planting that are generally flowering in August. In the Southeast. Not all of these are great for every location in North Carolina, but a lot of them will grow in a lot of places in North Carolina. So if you're looking at this list, and it is available on the Great Southeast Pollinator Census's website. So don't feel like you've got to like scribble all these down really quickly. But if you're not sure if they will do well in your area, make sure to check with your local cooperative extension office. I did want to make a note about the data that we're gathering. So I've seen some interesting things posted online about the census. And really the accuracy and the usefulness of our data starts with the plant species that you choose to count on. Because actually what the census is, it's a little bit of a misnomer. We're measuring pollinator visitation to a specific plant species when we take data for the census. So if you're counting at a nursery, or if you have labels in your garden, or if you're a gardener and you're like, it's a pretty flower, but I can't remember what it's called, make sure to look up the name of that plant and get it verified. So when you go to submit your data, you are attributing your counts to the right plant species. So definitely iNaturalist is a great one if is a great app. It is free, and there's some of the best botanists and naturalists on that app. It is full of experts who can help verify your plant species. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but you should definitely check out your local cooperative extension office. If a county agent does not know a plant, we have access to a team of specialists at NC State who can help identify plants. And Dr. Krings is in our plant biology department, and he knows all the plants. if not, knows somebody who can find them. I will tell you, Google Lens is getting much easier. So if you have an Android, that is typically already built into your phone, and it's getting pretty good. As with all things, though, you do need to be aware of some plant ID apps. I have not mentioned it here, but I will be posting on the census, the NC State-based census website, about some research that one of my Master Gardener volunteers did on plant ID apps, and I will link to that research when I get it posted. So you can learn about some of the better apps to choose if you want to get a plant ID app. So remember, we are putting on our researcher hat. So we're counting trips to a flower, not the total bee population, which is why that census kind of makes it a little hard to understand. And it is okay to say 0. If you don't see anything, that is a data point. This is not a popularity contest. It is really fun to find a really active plant that's just got a bunch of activity buzzing around, and watching that for 15 minutes is very stimulating. But it's still just as relevant to sit on a flower and maybe only 4 or 5 insects come to it, but they may be really specialized insects. And those are still really important data points to understand about the plant species we have in our local communities. There is some other data. So the data sheet is simple by design. We wanted it to be able to fit on a clipboard, but when you go to submit your data online, there are some other information that we ask for. And so there is as a note for number of counters. And so this is where you generally, if you're counting alone, you're going to put 1. But if you're working as a team, or you have multiple people working together, that is where you would put the number of people working on a 15-minute count on one plant. The state where you're counting, so you may be from North Carolina, but maybe in August you're visiting family in Alabama. You could still count at that location in Alabama, because you're going to put the county of the garden that you're in, the street address and city and zip code of where you're counting. You will see it says of the garden, but you do not have to count in a garden. You can count on the side of the road if you're walking down the side of the road, or at a park, or at one of those display containers. There is a question about how large is your garden. So there are 3 values: a small, medium, and large, with specific areas. And you'll just choose which one's appropriate. If you're counting as part of a school event or a group, please list the name or location of the event. If you are counting as part of like if you've gone to somewhere and someone is facilitating a count in a certain garden or at a certain location, ask them what they want that event to be called on their data sheet. And folks who want to host an event, make sure your counters know what that is. I've noticed in the past, people have called a lot of different things, events, lots of different things when they're the same event, and it makes it kind of hard to look at the data in the future. Again, you do have to note the common name and the scientific name of the plant that you're counting on. I hesitate to encourage you to use common names because they're not reliable. The scientific name is what is most important, because that's what's going to be the most accurate to match those pollinator preferences later. You're going to put your totals, your tally totals from your data sheet. Uh-oh, come back. There is a question in North Carolina, are honeybee hives within 5 miles of your garden? If you're in North Carolina, we have a website called BeeCheck, and you can actually pull up a list or a map of all the beehives that are registered in North Carolina with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. Now, it's not exhaustive, but it is certainly helpful. There are a lot of them. So check that out before when you're submitting your data. And if you're hosting an event, consider checking that before your event, so you can let people who are submitting data for your event know that there is or is not one. There's a question of, did you create or add to a pollinator garden in preparation for the census? Make sure you only say yes if you did it for the calendar year. So you planted a plant for the census because you planned this year in 2026. Maybe if you did one last year, that doesn't count. It's only if you planted it in 2026 for the 2026 census. If you're an educator, did you include the census as part of a STEM or STEAM program? So this can be any educator. We're not thinking just K through 12 teachers. This can be community college. This can be extension people. This can be a local naturalist, local organization, any kind of educator. Um, and then there's two kind of fun questions of did participating in the census change your understanding of the benefits provided by insects that visit your garden? Um, and then give us one fantastic fact that you learned by participating in the census. And I love reading these after the fact. When we have now that we've had more than 5,000 people submit, the answers are very interesting. But for me, as somebody who's been promoting this and doing pollinator education, it is so wonderful to see the answers and those light bulb moments. It makes all the work that goes into this worth it when I see those light bulbs come on. So I just want to clarify, one submission per plant count. So you can have two people, one person holding a clipboard and one person calling out pollinator groups, but that is only submitted as one data submission. So for example, we've had people in the past, like a class of students are counting on multiple plants on multiple teams, and the teacher adds all that data together and she submits it as one thing for the class. That is fine. And if that's what you choose to do, especially if you're a K through 12 teacher, it does make it certainly easier rather than submitting it for all of your students. But typically when I'm putting that data together, I throw that out because I can't tell which pollinator counted towards which plant. And so I can't really use that data. But from an education standpoint, it is very beneficial to your students to have gone through that process. So it is okay to still submit that and have that data point for you and for your class. But for the usefulness to our data set, it does get thrown out. So if you wanted something to count, you could have a 2-student team counting, and they're recording their data on the same plant. This would be one submission, and when you entered it, it would be 2 in the number of counters. So remember, one submission per plant count. There are a lot of resources for the Great Southeast Pollinator Census for all different types of people who want to participate, whether it's just like, hey, Amanda, I just want to count in my own garden for you in August. There is something for you all the way up to like, hey, I am, a community leader who wants to get my whole community out to the local park to count pollinators. We have something for you too. So there's 2 websites that you definitely want to put down. The main big website that is hosted for the entire Southeast is gsepc.org. And that is hosted by my colleague in Georgia. I host a North Carolina specific website. That way I can keep it relevant to North Carolina. I can share extension resources and get folks connected with resources in their North Carolina communities. If you're joining this webinar from another state, I'm so glad that you're here, and you can still use the North Carolina website because a lot of the curricula and resources that we have are still relevant to you, but you may want to connect with your coordinator in your state for more state-specific resources. On the main Georgia region-wide Southeast Pollinator Census website, Becky's background is in community and school gardens, so she has a ton of resources for educators of curricula that she has worked with specialists to align with Georgia standards. And there's all sorts of different activities, not just garden related. There's literary arts, there's math, there's graphing. She has it all there. So, and I do link to that from our North Carolina page. Oh, I did want to shout out, last year, she published this pollinator journal curriculum. I love it. It is one of my favorites. And if you're a literary arts teacher, or if you are a science teacher, it's still a great one to utilize in your classroom or even in your community. The census materials are available in Spanish. So if you are serving Latino communities in your local community, they are written in Spanish, and we're always open to expanding these resources. So please let me know if you're utilizing these resources, and if you need more support. People love stickers and certificates. So every year, we choose a different insect group to focus on. In 2025, it was the wasps. This year, I think we're focusing on moths. So hello, she will. Our so sorry. Ooh, my phone. There we go. So we will be posting a 2026 Great Southeast Pollinator Census I Counted sticker. Usually in July is when those get posted. And every year we update the Great Southeast Pollinator Census certificate. So if you're doing it with a community or with a class or with a group, you can print these out for your group if you would like. In North Carolina, we have North Carolina specific stickers. People love stickers. It was like one of the most requested resources whenever we were putting this together. And so on our website, we have a folder, a Google folder where you can download printing sheets and you can print your own stickers. You can also download them and send them to a local print shop. But they are perfect circles and they're also not date specific. So if you're doing it for an event, if you don't give out all your stickers in 2026, you can still use them in 2027. If you are inspired to create a pollinator garden in your local community, and you're not sure how to start, I do highly recommend going to talk to your local cooperative extension agent, talk to the horticulture agent and a master gardener volunteer and get their advice. I've seen a lot of people not to start with the best of intentions, but maybe not do it in the most efficient way, or just, maybe not the most effective way for pollinators. If you're doing it as part of a large community effort, definitely make sure you have a long-term sustainability plan. You cannot just build it and leave it. Gardens do not take care of themselves. They do have to be tended by humans. Otherwise, Mother Nature will just put weeds back there. So make sure that after the installation day, when the buzz is happening, that there's someone there to continue to water the plants, weed, and eventually maybe edit the garden as it grows. There are many resources for funding, especially for school gardens and for local communities. But again, a lot of them require a sustainability plan. So make sure you are tying it into other programs. I've seen the most long-term successful pollinator gardens that are for the public have multiple community partners that are bought into the idea of having this, and they're all working together to care for that space. Extension has lots of great resources on our website. So we've got a Bees of North Carolina guide, which is an identification guide to all the major bee groups in North Carolina, more than 580 different species. Butterflies in your backyard, wildlife-friendly landscapes, pollinator conservation. We have a lot of different resources, and they're all linked on the North Carolina Census website. If you are a K through 12 educator or a homeschool educator, our 4-H program through Extension. I know a lot of people think of that as like the animal people, but 4-H is a lot of different things. It's all science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So it's not just animals and agriculture. And there are 5 different pollinator related curricula that are standard aligned for North Carolina, and they are usually free through your local 4-H agent. We have been focusing on pollinators through Extension for a while, and Charlotte Glenn, who is the state coordinator for the Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Program, has been developing these plant these for pollinators slides. And if you want to check out these really easy to digest slides about different great pollinator plants that you can add to your garden to maximize pollinator benefit. Check this out. They're very easy to read, beautiful pictures, clickable links. I can't promote that enough, actually. Um, and you're here interested in the census, probably because you're already interested in pollinators. But you really, if you're hosting an event or you're trying to share information about the census, not everybody knows about why pollinators are important. And so as maybe an ambassador of the census, you can help people understand why they should care about pollinators. First of all, pollinators, by design, they're helping with pollination services. All of our flowers, most of our flowers, for the things that we like to eat are pollinated by animal pollinators, mainly insects. And so if we like to eat a diversity of foods, we need them to go to be present and pollinate out there. And so if we want functioning economies, we need to have some fruit and veg to sell. And by these pollinators, pollinating plants, not just desirable plants, but also just other plants in the ecosystem, they are continuing those ecosystem functions and supporting those. We are seeing pollinator declines across the world, mostly plant pollinator diversity. There are some pollinators that are thriving under our current kind of management conditions, and there are some pollinators that are going away because they're highly specialized. We need diversity of pollinators, so we need folks to be aware that diversity is important and that all pollinators are important. And from a spiritual and a psychological standpoint, we like to share our gardens and spaces with others, animals, plants, everybody else included. It's really important to our psyche to be able to have that presence in our spaces. And I can tell you that people do get worried when they don't start seeing bees in the springtime. People notice. So it is really important for us psychologically. Also, the future is really important. You know, we need these not just for ourselves, but future generations of humans who need these animals. So remember that it's not just about us who are here now, it's for the future. So back to the census. So if you have been compelled by today's presentation, and you just want to like, hey, Amanda, I'm just going to count by myself. That's awesome. That is so important. It takes everybody doing their part. If you've been compelled by today's message, please spread the word. We have lots of time, August 21st and 22nd. So we've got lots of time to share with people about this resource. Encourage other people to count in your county, in your communities. And if you're so inclined, you can even host an educational event on or before the census. In Lee County, we do a few programs leading up to the census, and then on the census day, we'll typically have how to build a pollinator garden classes that people can come to, and even sell pollinator plants that day. If you're interested in hosting a census event, it's nothing official. I love to hear about if you're having one. I will be posting a map of all the census events. Stay tuned for that. I usually start doing that in June. But there's really no like, you got to do this and this and this. You can make it whatever works for your communities. I will tell you it's August, so you need to be able to provide some shade and water and clipboards. And I've seen some people have a lot of success laminating the sheets for reuse, although some people like to be able to send them home with people too. It's whatever you have access to. I've seen people, especially because we want everyone to count and different people are coming from different knowledge levels. Sometimes having a station system helps, or identifying different plants that you're going to focus on during a count can help minimize the barrier to entry for people. The most successful events have been partnerships between local organizations. And if you are a local organization that is interested in having a census event, I would recommend contacting your local extension office. Like I said, there's quite a few of them across the state that are already looking to do events, and we always love partnering with local organizations. Whoop, whoop, come back. Definitely advertise and try to do education outreach prior to the event if you're having it. And consider hosting an identification workshop or a gardening workshop before or during the census. Again, it kind of draws people to the space, to the location. And then it also, again, makes people feel confident that they can participate successfully. And remember, if you don't have the bandwidth to do that, you can always just share about the Get to Know the Pollinators webinar in July. I've seen a lot of local organizations use that to inspire their communities, and that gets posted on our website, so people can even share it prior to, so people can watch that on their own time and learn about those. And like I've said before, I've seen nurseries have counting stations near their pollinator plants. Teachers are parsing out different scientist roles in their gardens. Master gardener volunteers can be great local experts, floating experts to help with identification and garden interpretation. One thing that I was reminded of, and I forgot to mention this, there is an official book that was written, children's book that was written for the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. I'll make sure to include that in the follow-up email. But it's a great book to read, even to older students. And it's essentially a pictorial how to do the census. So one of my goals this year is to partner with the Lee County libraries to do that as the story time book for August. So I will say I've been mentioning a lot about cooperative extension. There are extension offices in all 100 North Carolina counties and the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. If you go to this website, find your local county center, you can look at what county you're in, call that number and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm interested in participating in the census, and you can find out more about what local communities are doing. Like I said, as we get closer to the census, that North Carolina website becomes more and more relevant as I try to post information, local information on there. There's this slide here. This is a slide that I will make available to everybody on the Great Southeast Pollinator Census website. So if you're hosting a class or you have a digital billboard, cycling in your local community center, or if you're doing a presentation, you can put this in that slide deck. And it's a really quick go and grab about what the Great Southeast Pollinator Census is. And this QR code links directly to the Great Southeast Pollinator Census in North Carolina website. So, been talking for a while now, so I hope that I can challenge you to think about what you can do in your backyard and your community with the census and for pollinators. And thank you so much for your time for being here. So, finish right on time. So now is time for questions. So I see a few folks have popped up in the chat. I've seen a lot of questions about, we've got a question from Elizabeth. Are there any maps of extension areas for Florida? And I would contact Jeremy Roden, who is the state coordinator for Florida. I know he is really interested in getting a Florida map based on the model that we have in North Carolina. So I imagine if you emailed him, and you can find his email on the main census website. All of our contact informations are on the main page. Email him and ask if he's working on that. Marie, thank you for mentioning the North Carolina Native Plant Society does have a great resource for pollinator-friendly native plants. Um, the North Carolina Native Plant Society is turning 75 this year. They've got some really great happenings in September. Uh, let's see. So I'm going to open the Q&A here, and I appreciate folks who've been popping questions in there. Uh, So Heather said on the pollinator count sheet, it lists other insects and shows a photo of a spider, which is actually not an insect. It is an arachnid, and you are correct. Do you want information on spiders, or should they be removed from your checklist or put in another category of your own? So, Heather, you are correct. Arachnids are not in the class Insecta. Unfortunately, because of the nature of the people who are using this, they are included as the unofficial insect. Um, and we're not really concerned about them. We are really focused more on pollinators. So sometimes there are flower spiders or lynx spiders that are on the plant. And if you are an entomologist and you're kind of aware of that spider not really providing pollinator services, some people don't count them, but the general public may not understand that spider is probably not spreading pollen the most effectively. So it's to just accommodate people who are seeing that spider on the flower, given that the protocol says you need to count the insects that are landing on the plant. But it's a very good question to ask. Um, Marcia asked, should we count non-flying insects such as ants, caterpillars, or non-flying beetles? Yes, if they are on the plant, and they are moving around the flowers, yes, they count. Now, because they're not flying, they're not necessarily coming and going, so they would only count once. The point is to count pollinators. So pollinators are insects and animals that move pollen between flowers. Um, Lauren asked in the chat, where do I find the pollinator journal info? So if you go to the main census website, the gsepc.org website, it is under the resources tab in the top right for educators. And it's a whole big PDF that you can download. It's really cool. Highly recommend it. Um, so, are there any other questions from folks? Well, I really appreciate everyone today. That is what we've got to cover. But stay tuned. You are going to get a recording of this webinar, and I will post it online. There will be resources and links to all the different resources that I've mentioned in the slideshow. And I will also include you on updates about when we are going to have our Get to Know the Insects webinar in July and our Knowledge is Pollinator Power webinar in August. And in between, if you have any questions or you are inspired to do something big, you are welcome to contact me. My contact information is Amanda_Bratcher at ncsu.edu. But you've gotten my email because you got the information for the webinar. So feel free to email me anytime. That's what I'm here for. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you so much for joining.